Oh, it is that time of year again. Sports bars are overly crowded. Wings are at plenty. It's NFL season, so we're going to jump into this second part of the podcast, talk a little bit more NFL. Let's look at week one. San Fran proving that last year wasn't a fluke. I think if you watch that game, if you use the eye test, that was a pretty dominant performance. You know, they gave them a touchdown on the block in the back call that wasn't there, and then they scored later. That game could have been a 17-point blowout. I think it was pretty impressive. I had my doubts about it, but that defense looked good, and I think San Fran's going to stay on top with that defense. And in that pretty bad division, I think they'll be one of the favorites towards the end of the year to come out of the NFC. I'd also like to just look at, I don't think you should take too much in one win. You know, the difference between college and NFL is one game doesn't decide your season. You lose in college, it knocks you out of the national title picture pretty soundly. You know, RG3, I had my doubts, and he proved me wrong. He looked great against the Saints. But you have to look in perspective of, you know, if you look at the worst 5 passing defenses last year, last was Green Bay, Patriots were right behind them, and the Saints were third worst, and then you have the Giants and Bears. I mean, those are pretty surprising because those are teams that win. If you look at, you know, this kind of, you have to look at it in perspective. You know, he was compared to all the other rookies, and I understand that on the road, New Orleans has a lot of emotion going into it. There's going to be a lot of pressure, and he definitely proved people wrong. But I just think you have to look at the whole situation. It was impressive. I don't know if he can do it the entire season. That Saints defense isn't too good. And I mean, you look at the Jets offense. They didn't score a touchdown the entire preseason. They put up 40 points against the Bills defense, which was supposed to be better. They didn't really show that last week. And I would also be skeptical I am a Baltimore Ravens fan as well as a Bucs fan, and that defense, you know, if Ed Reed isn't playing healthy the entire year, I don't know how much you can expect without Suggs, without Reed 100%. So I wouldn't look too much into the one win. I really do think that this league is becoming more of a passing league. I mean, you look at the teams who were in the Super Bowl, the Giants and the Patriots. The Giants were last in rushing. Green Bay was 27th, and the Patriots were 20th. You look at the teams that are making the playoffs, you need to have some sort of defense behind you, and I think that's where the Giants have they can get pressure on the quarterback without having to blitz. And that is the biggest thing. That's the one thing I try to drive home all the time is if you can get pressure with your front 4, your front 3, if you can get to the quarterback, your secondary looks that much better. I mean, when the Giants didn't get to Tony Romo, he picked them apart. Their cornerbacks looked silly. I mean, their secondary is already banged up as is. They're going to be playing their 3rd and 4th cornerbacks, I believe, coming up against the Bucs this week. But if you can't get pressure, you're going to be exposed. And I think that was a major thing with these other offenses. Green Bay's defense let them down against the Giants. You know, the Patriots. You know, you'll see that trend, you know, develop throughout the league where it's going to become more passing than rushing. I mean, the Giants were 5th overall in passing, Green Bay was 3rd, the Patriots were 2nd, and the Saints were 1st. So those are all playoff teams. Those are all teams contending for Super Bowls, have won Super Bowls in the past. So I think that is a big factor coming up into this season. So I wouldn't take too much from a win. I wouldn't take too much from a loss. It's kind of really early to tell. You know, everybody looks good, no injuries. You know, everyone 0-0, everyone's tied for the division. It will start to pan out within the next 2 to 3 weeks. I think after 3 or 4 games, that's when you'll really see what teams are about, whether that they'll be able to sustain the success they've had early on in the season. Well, let's jump in now that we're talking about the Giants. A Bucs fan for the local Tampa people here. They're traveling up to New York. They had an impressive win against Cam Newton and the Panthers. Defense surprised me. Didn't really see that one happening, but you know, I'm happy with the result. I'm happy with the way Mark Barron showed up. I'm happy with our defensive line. Would have liked a little bit more from the offense. It was a good first drive, but I think you can improve on that, and I think defense was a major step. Now going into the Giants, I think they really need to run the ball. They're going to need to run the ball to keep Eli off the field because after, you know, Cam Newton's Cam Newton, but Eli Manning's won 2 Super Bowls, and I don't think I think he's going to want to have a bounce back game. But where the matchup lies, I think there's always a matchup in every game that's going to decide it, and I think it's the Bucs O-line versus the Giants D-line. And I was just talking about it, getting pressure to the quarterback without having to blitz. I think if we can make them blitz, if we can get enough protection for Freeman, I think that will give them time, and we have the weapons that will be able to expose that secondary that's injured, banged up, and not really that good. So I think the Bucs are going to be able to run the ball. I think we'll give Freeman enough protection. I actually like the Bucs to win this game 20-17. So now let's take a look at some three fantasy guys to avoid and 3 fantasy players I think will have a breakout week this week coming up. 3 guys I would avoid. MJD versus Houston. I mean, he missed the entire training camp. He didn't look that sharp last week against the Vikings. Houston's defense is pretty good. I think they're going to shut him down. The next guy I would really stay away from is DeMarco Murray. He's playing up in Seattle. Seattle has a good rushing defense. I think they gave up 23 total yards to the Cardinals, which I know isn't prolific, but you're an NFL team. You should be able to run the ball, run more than 20, 30 yards in a single game. So DeMarco Murray I would really stay away from. And the last one is RG3. The Cardinals. The Rams made Stafford throw 4 picks. I know he gained a lot of passing yards. They didn't really run the ball as much, but I feel like he's going to be a little bit exposed this week on the road. Yet again, he has to start his career 2 weeks on the road. I think he will have a few turnovers, so I would stay away from him if you're planning on starting him. 3 guys I think will have an upside. Cam Newton. I just talked about the Saints' passing defense. Not any better without Vilma. They gave up 300 yards to a rookie at home in an opener. I think he bounces back from the performance he had against the Bucs. And well, actually, I think they'll beat the Saints at home, but I would like him to put up some bigger fantasy numbers. The next guy I have is A.J. Green. No Joe Hayden in Cleveland. Cincinnati's at home. He went up against the Baltimore defense, and he still found pockets and holes to catch the ball. I think he gets into the end zone this time against the sorry Browns team, so I like A.J. Green. And the last guy I have is another wide receiver in Stevie Johnson. The Bills are at home against Kansas City, who gave up 40 points to Atlanta in their home opener. Julio Jones went off. You know, the fast, prolific guys I think are going to give Kansas City trouble. David Nelson went out with a season, so he is pretty much their primary target. I think he's going to have a big fantasy week for them. So now I gave you my 3 winners in college football, or my parlays. So let's go over the parlays in the NFL this week. The first game I got is the Vikings at the Colts. The Colts are getting 2 points here at home. That's very rare to see in the NFL, with teams that are very even after 1 week. Neither are projected to be playoff teams, so I think the Colts, +2 in this game. They only ran the ball 15 times last week. They ran it with some success, but they put a lot on Andrew Luck's shoulders coming right out of the gate. I think the Vikings are nowhere close to as good as the Bears, so Luck will have more support in the run game. I think the Vikings, they gave up 23 points to the Jags. That's not a prolific offense. Their best receiving target is a rookie. Blaine Gabbert can barely throw the ball last year, and he hasn't shown that he's going to improve anything. I think the Colts run D will slow down AP enough to where they will actually get a win at home 17-14, so I like the Colts +2 in the first game. Second game I'm looking at is one I had mentioned before, the Cowboys going up to Seattle. Seattle is a 3-point underdog here. They're getting 3 points. They have one of the top secondaries in the league. I don't think many people know that because they play out on the West Coast a lot, and they're not really shown nationally. I think the run D will be able to slow DeMarco Murray down, and I believe that was a key in them beating the Giants, is they also had that balance with him running the ball. And a stat that you would want to look at if you're trying to throw money down is in the last 9 home games for Seattle, if you took Seattle on the spread, they're 8-1 at home. That's one of the loudest stadiums. I think the Cowboys will eke out a victory, maybe by a field goal, but it's not going to be much more. I have the Cowboys 17-14 as well in that game. And the last game I'm looking at is another one I've been talking about a lot, is Washington going to St. Louis. St. Louis is the underdog. They're getting +3 points at home. They played the 3rd worst passing defense without their leader Vilma on the field. That, I think, played a lot into RG3's success. I think St. Louis like I said, we'll make him turn the ball over. Finnegan is over there now in St. Louis. Chris Long's coming off the DN. I think they'll get enough pressure on RG3. And I think Steven Jackson will run the ball better this week, keep Washington off the field. Alfred Morris will not have the same success. I don't think that offense is going to look as dynamic. And I think the Rams actually take a victory by a field goal. I'm looking at a low-scoring game at 13-10. And if you're looking at a bonus game here, I like the Ravens +3 on the road against the Eagles. There's a lot of pressure up there, and if in all sports, when you play in a major city like New York, Philly, Boston, I think that pressure plays in more than what the average fan knows. If one thing starts going bad for Philly this week, I can see I can see them kind of crumbling down like they did last year in some games. And I like the Ravens D, and their offense looks pretty good coming out of week 1, so I would take 3 points with them on the road. Well, that's going to do it for the first 2 podcasts of this season. It's good to be back. We're hopefully going to have some more winners next week. Get back into the studio, and it's the best time of the year, football season. So until next time, I'll talk to you later.